What's up, everybody? I usually start by saying Happy Monday.
No, not happy
Not a
Monday.
happy Monday. It's been a rough one. Kobe, just for people who don't know, like I understand people have a different feeling about Kobe. I've always been mostly feel like I'm fighting an uphill battle defending this man. He's my favorite athlete of all time, not just my favorite basketball player. The mentality, the way that he plays, it really always appealed to me. He's the reason I fell in love with basketball before Kobe, but that really made me fall in love with basketball. Him being a Laker obviously didn't hurt either. Um, but the attachment that we have towards him in LA, I don't think other people can fully grasp. And there is, I was on a train yesterday with my 13-year-old daughter when the news came out, and everybody was gasping and just completely blown away. We were on a train from LA to Santa Barbara, and everybody then is watching the news together. People are hugging and crying together. This is on a train there. I go up to Santa Barbara. I turn immediately around to come back because I didn't. Obviously, I wanted to be in this environment. I was supposed to maybe do some shows, so I come back down. Well, first of all, I get off in Santa Barbara, and everybody in Santa Barbara is wearing 24 and 8s everywhere. So a lot of love for that. I come back down here to Staples, and we walked around hugging each other. Like it or not, this man has been a huge part of our life, and he's the what epitomizes the way that I feel like if you ever want to teach someone how to play a sport, if you want to be great at anything, not a sport, anything you want to do, you do it with that mentality. You do it with the mentality that you absolutely refuse to fail. And I have such admiration for that. And that's partly what draws me to guys like Russell Westbrook when we talk about that all the time, why I'm always on his side of things, because there's something about that mentality of just, I will do anything I can to win and to get my team to win. Obviously I have a lot of personal feelings going on today, but we want to do a show. I'm going to play heavy tonight. I love DFS. I love what I do. This is part of why I do all the things I do. So that's where I'm at. And I'm sorry to open like that, Sheets. I know it's putting a lot of stuff on you, but it's where I'm at.
No, well, I'm going to spend just a few minutes on it, so maybe coming from a different perspective, not even different perspective, just, I'm a little older than you are. And as we talked about kind of pre-show, I'm like in my low 50s. So I didn't grow up with the same, access, I guess, to my favorite athletes as everybody else does of your generation, for example. There wasn't Twitter, there wasn't whatever. The closest I come up with was when I was like 12 years old and Thurman Munson died in a plane crash. It was just different because we just didn't really have the same access to these guys. We read about them in the paper and all this kind of stuff. And I guess this is the lesson that I'll say to people, because I hear from some people who aren't into sports, not what's the big deal, but boy, why is it like just totally taking over the news like this? I mean, what about the other people that die? What about the people that die every day and stuff like that? And this is the way I kind of look at it. When I was young, when I was really young, I would just pay the most attention to the really famous people that tragedies happened to because they were really famous. And then as I got into maybe, I don't know, my 20s and 30s, I got a little jaded. I was like, well, what's the big deal about this guy? Just because he can, shoot a basketball. Why should his death be regarded as any more important than, for example, anybody else on the plane with him? Or why shouldn't we also make a big deal about another 41-year-old guy who might die tragically or whatever it is? But then as I get to be even older than that, you really start to appreciate really the impact that someone like that has on really the whole community and people who are not just into sports, but into media and into everything. And to be that naive and to say, well, his just death is just like, why should that be different than anybody else's? That's like incredibly naive. And what Bobby is kind of alluding to is, I can't imagine the combination of being of the generation that kind of grew up with him as a sports idol, plus the living in Los Angeles thing. I think that could explain just how the Kobe thing is just so much bigger than almost anything.
If I had to put it into words for someone else, because like you would think Magic, and we all love Magic. So the biggest days in sports history in LA were yesterday and today. Magic found out he had AIDS for us. I mean, that was the biggest non-sports days, maybe the biggest sports days ever. But Magic didn't have anywhere near the love that people feel towards Kobe. There is a weird attachment that the city has with him, and it's almost like the horrible things and the BS allegations and all the stuff in Colorado, all the things that actually like almost like a united, like an us against them type of mentality. I really feel like I don't know how it happened, but it did. And the attachment when Shaq was the best player in the league and we were winning titles and Kobe basically was saying it's me or him, in most situations, I mean, you can't imagine now the best player not getting their way. I mean, Shaq was the best player. There was nobody in LA wanted Shaq. We wanted Kobe. Kobe was our guy. Kobe's a Laker. He's our guy. To a city that we have a lot of different sports teams, a lot of different heroes, a lot of different athletes, there is not one person who has anywhere near the impact that man had. And what's bizarre is we only got a glimpse of his post career because look, he's retired for 2 years and he already has an Oscar. He wrote a book, bestseller, by the way. The guy was going to do great things. As a father, his children, it was something that me and my daughter shared in, just the way that she was obsessed with watching his daughter and him go to the games and stuff because they're the same age, and how into it he was and how into her playing I am. There was a lot of ways this really is just a touching thing for me personally, but from an overall LA perspective, it's a somber day. Like there's something missing.
I lived in LA when the Magic news came out. Actually,
oh really?
That was my 2 years that I lived in LA. And I don't know whether it was just the media was just different then. It was just different. This thing, and because dying is different, but this is just so much bigger. It just is.
It is. It's interesting. As a side note, I don't want to make this about myself, but so Magic, we ended up on a boat next to him in France about, what was it? I guess it was about a few months after he announced that he had AIDS. And I don't know why I'm on this story. Maybe I'm just in a sentimental mood, but Magic, we had 18 kids. We were traveling with family and friends, and Magic came out there and heard us on the boat next door. And we were in France in a little town in Antibes. And before it was like people traveled there. So he was so happy to see us, and we were from LA, and Magic comes over and just asks us if we want to play football with him. And we played football with us for hours. I love the man. Anyway, sorry, I don't know why I'm on that, but I think I'm in a little bit of a sentimental mood. You might have to carry a little bit of the strategic stuff for a little bit of this show, but I'm going to try and do my best because
dude, Bobby's listen. Look, for those of you who've been following our live streams and whatever it was, it's been a tough week for Bobby. Let's just put it that way. It's been a tough week. He's been winning again. You know what I mean, which is good. But emotionally, it's been a little bit of a rough go. You know what I mean. So one thing about Bobby, unlike me, like one thing that very few people know about me, I am just probably like the least competitive person on the face of the earth. Okay, it's just that's just not me. Whether I win or lose, it's my blood pressure doesn't go anywhere, and it just whether that's a positive or negative, it is what it is. And Bobby is like, and he even texted me the other night when he got screwed out of whatever he got screwed out of. He's like, dude, I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm just a bad loser, right? And I'm not saying that's a negative. He's just very, very competitive, and he's very emotional. And I will tell you this is that I'm not fading him tonight. That's for sure. Let's put it that way.
No, I'm going heavy tonight. I'm going heavy tonight. This is a win it for Kobe type of thing. Also been on a good streak lately. I feel like I have a really good grasp on what's happening, even with the bizarre switches we're seeing. And I think there's narrative street all over the place tonight. So we're going to figure this one out.
Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, okay, could we start with the last game? Can we start with the Houston game?
Let's do it however you want to do it. Let's do it that way.
Yeah. So we're going to start with the Houston game because how much you access the Houston value is going to impact what you do on the rest of the slate, right? So Harden is going to be out. Westbrook, I presume, is going to be out. They already announced him doubtful. I mean, we could talk about the possibility that he might just play one for Kobe or something like that.
Yeah, he said. So here's what I would say about real quickly before we get into anything else. I think on DraftKings it's worth making lineups where you can maybe play him and someone, and then maybe pivot over to maybe two Jazz players if he doesn't play. Just because with Harden out, with them struggling in general, I know he's not supposed to play on these back-to-backs, but I could see this being an exception. It's an unprecedented day, so we should be ready for unprecedented things. Is the way we should.
Okay. Well, I'm presuming for a second that he's out. Okay. Yeah. So because that's the last thing that we heard.
Yeah, that's most likely what's happening. Yes.
Right. So what you have here, and you'll see the 7 lineups I kind of created here. And again, these aren't what I'm going to play, but there's no way you can figure out what these things are. But what these are is just different ways of attacking Houston guys. So, like, you could play any of, on DraftKings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys. And if you wanted to make a real off-the-wall tournament idea, playing Eric Gordon at an overpriced 6,900.
That's the right way to go.
You know, I could listen to that also, right?
Yeah.
So the question of how to attack the Houston thing is going to dictate how many of these other kind of good mid-range or upper-range guys you get on the rest of the slate, and there are plenty of them. So, I have a weird take on this game, but first of all, let's first address the fact that this has sort of happened before, in that there was one game recently where I think Westbrook, Harden, and I also think Capella was out too when they played New Orleans, and I think they played a really, really good game for like a while before they kind of gave up a little bit. So all these guys freaking smashed. I think McLemore might have been the one who smashed the most. I forget. No, actually, I think it was Clemens who smashed the most. I'm not exactly sure, but they were all just kind of going off. See, the way I look at games like this is when you have Harden and Westbrook out, these other guys, it's just freaking open season. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, I am so pumped, from a basketball perspective, that I can just start firing, that all these guys are just firing away, So I don't really know how to rank them. You have Austin Rivers, and I'm going to get to Capella in a second, but Chris Clemens and Daniel House. Now, again, we're not going to talk about Gordon for a second. We're just talking about the value guys first. So there's Rivers, Clemens, and House, which are going to be three guys. And then I think kind of on a different kind of plane is PJ Tucker, right? Because he's not the guy that's going to be firing it up a lot, but he's just going to naturally have to get those minutes. And he's 4,100.
Have the minute. He always has the minutes, but he will have to take more shots. Like, it's just impossible that he won't be on the. You know what I mean? You lose Harden and Westbrook off the court, the whole game changes in terms of how many shots are just available.
Yeah, and the interesting one that I struggle with is Capella, because on the one hand, I mean, you have no Harden and Westbrook. You'd have to think that usage is going to have to go to him, but you can make all kinds of basketball related arguments that you lose a lot of the pick and roll lob stuff to Capella. You know what I mean? That with all these other guys just firing away, he might not be in position to get as many offensive rebounds. They might be flying out all over the place, and that plus, the very obvious blowout risk in this game at this point. Capella, might not be run out for a zillion minutes if the game is kind of like losing stick a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I think that the first decision you really have to make is what to do about the Houston thing. Now, you want to talk me into the Gordon 6,900 thing. That's going to be a rough sell for me, just because of the other guys that, you could pay up a little more for. And the fact that all these other guys are going to be firing away. So that's the first thing I think about with the Houston is where to go between all these different options.
So, I mean, I just want to point out, like, even with, you didn't have Westbrook or didn't have Harden yesterday, but like, you've got Eric Gordon playing still 35 minutes and even putting up 19, 14, 11, 12, 18, 19, 17, 14, and 13 shots in his last games. The fact that he's going to have to be a creator, which, going back to his old days, he actually can do, but has not been required to in many, many years, because he's played with James Harden. You don't really need another creator. I mean, and then you've got Westbrook on there too. I think Eric Gordon, you could end up, like, on FanDuel, I don't even know if you can discuss not playing him, in my opinion. I think that he might be unfadable on FanDuel. At 6,900, I think he's a phenomenal tournament play. I think you could be looking at 50-plus fantasy points very easily. It depends on the game environment. So if I'm gonna play Eric Gordon, I would be more inclined to play like 4 or 5 Houston players and at least 1 or 2, like I guess 4 and 1 or 2 of the Utah side, because my whole thing when we have all these injuries, you stack and pray. But you also stack the other side of the game, because all the chalk's going to be on the Houston side of it. Whereas if this game stays close, this is a phenomenal matchup for the Jazz. Like, this is a great spot. Now, I think Mitchell will get some ownership. I think Bogdanovich will get some ownership. I actually love Ingles. He's one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. He'll probably have some ownership as well, just because of his price. But Royce O'Neal won't get ownership, and he's going to play 30-plus minutes in a ceiling-type environment, and he's 4.2. Jordan Clarkson has massive upside in this type of situation. He's 4.6, not going to get any ownership. I don't love the matchup for Gobert, but I don't see anyone paying $9K for Gobert, so that's an interesting tournament play. Mike Conley, we're going to start seeing minutes trend up a little bit for him at some point. Speculating on that might be interesting tonight. I sort of like this game as like a full-on stack. If I'm going to play the Gordons, the Capellas, I think you've got to not just run it back, but you've got to hammer at the Houston side. And for me, the Houston side is pretty easy. I actually feel like Clemens will get the most ownership, but I think Rivers is probably the safest play on the slate. Like, I don't really see how he doesn't. Like, I really don't. Like, I don't know how he doesn't get there. I think Daniel House is just barely behind him as being like a damn near lock. Like, I don't know how he wouldn't, like, I mean, these guys got to play minutes. You know what I mean? There's only
Yeah.
one to go around, so we're gonna love this game. Maybe we can revisit at the end after we go through the rest of the slate, because I don't see any way not to have at least a couple of Houston players in my lineups right now. And I'd like to find a way to pivot off that chalk, but I don't know if there is.
Yeah, see, this is what I did. I did, and I do this kind of with Optimize just to kind of see what happens. And the first thing I do is I say, what would an optimal lineup look like, and how many Rockets would it throw in there? It's somewhere between 2 and 4, depending on which ones you use and what else you do. And then just for the hell of it, I said, well, how much would you cost yourself if you only played like 1 or like 0 or something like that? And there's a pretty, I mean, I don't want to say substantial, but it's a good enough drop where you probably were going to want to have at least 1. Even in the real large field MTTs, it's kind of tough to have a situation where at least one of them doesn't get 10x, right? I mean, like, someone just got to, just from,
Really
like,
hard to imagine.
I just don't know who exactly it's going to be, but it's kind of hard for at least one of them not to get there. The one guy that
it's not like Utah's the same, like, slow down defensive juggernaut. They're great defensively, but
I think if you really want to win, this is going to be hard, but I do think that you want to find that guy who's going to be there in there regardless of results for Houston. I don't know.
I feel like Austin Rivers' minutes are pretty safe, and I feel like Chris Clemens would be the guy who would probably play his normal 20-ish minutes no matter what. But I don't know if there's any. I don't know I know there's upside on it, but I don't know that he's as much of a lock to like I would just play Rivers. I just think Rivers and Daniel House, like, being on the court that much without James Harden and Russell Westbrook, you're gonna have to shoot the ball. Like, there's not a choice. You're gonna have to create. Somebody's gonna get assists by accident. I don't see how you avoid those guys. And again, PJ Tucker's gonna get a lot more shots, and he's playing those minutes as well. So I have those guys, in that's the guys who I'm playing the most. It's the House.
So
Tucker.
so in GPPs, I mean, I've been listening and learning from you like a long time. So it seems as though if you would want to stack this game, you'd have to find a way to do it though without going too chalky, right? So I think the idea, correct me if I'm wrong, would be either to go a little lower owned on Houston, you know what I mean, or a little lower owned on Utah. Like, you can't get away with, I don't think, like Mitchell, Bogdanovich, and then like all 3 of those, Houston guards.
I think if you play Gordon and McLemore also, or something like that.
Ooh, McLemore. Now that would be the real overspend, right?
No,
both him and Gordon.
He is, and by the way, this guy will put up some shots tonight, I think. It's an overspend for sure. Again, on FanDuel,
that's fine.
In my opinion, if you're not playing bad McLemore on FanDuel, I mean, look, maybe I'll figure out something different by the end of the slate. You're doing it wrong. I don't know
McLemore or Gordon.
McLemore. Well, I guess you could argue because you could be playing one of the other Houston guys, I guess. But McLemore's 3.6 on FanDuel.
Oh, really?
The McLemore is going to play 30 minutes tonight. McLemore, like, this guy has a pedigree. Like, he has talent. Like, this is a guy who at one point was considered to be he was going to be the number 1 pick a few years back. If there's everybody gone in a game, I think we can expect to see McLemore try and potentially take over. So we're going to get exposure to all these guys. McLemore is not my favorite, but at no ownership, he'd be the one who you could stack with that's going to be off the board. And Eric Gordon is going to be also. I think
that the guys that you mentioned, all right, are the ones that I'm really going to have to play, and I have no problem with them if I play decent amount of Houston guys or whatever, are the Mike Conleys, Jordan Clarkson, Royce O'Neal, and Joe Ingles. I think that all those guys are perfectly fine run backs in this game, and they're going to be the lower stone of the Utah guys. And yeah, I mean, I think Conley, this is, at some point he's gonna get there. He's gonna do something good. And Jordan Clarkson, in a game where maybe there's no defense played by Houston, he gets in, he could shoot a zillion times, and Ingles obviously can always get there. And Royce O'Neal, like I said, I mean, you just play like Mitchell and Bojan with Rivers and Clemens and Capella or whatever. I just don't think you're getting anywhere in a GPP. I think like you have to like either play Gordon and or McLemore or both. You know what I mean? And maybe like get a little off the board with the Utah guys.
Yeah, unless we find like one other game where we like a player that's going to be completely unowned at a high price or something.
Okay. So since I'm in charge, we'll go back to the beginning now. Okay.
Okay.
So let's now go to the Cleveland Detroit game. All right. So again, I wanted to do that because I want to see what's going on. So like now keep something in mind as you go through these games, right? So you know that you could play whoever you want. You know what I mean? Like you know that you have access to all this Houston value if you find other guys that you want to play. So you're not going to be really price restricted. So you then have to kind of figure out as you go through the slate who's going to be, again, low enough owned and with enough upside that if you're pairing them with the cheaper, chalkier value on the Houston side, that you're doing the right thing, right? So again, with that kind of slate view in mind, we can go through some of these games a little bit. So Cleveland against Detroit, I have an opinion on one guy on Cleveland. I'll get to him in a second. But first on Detroit, I mean, Andre Drummond is going to be, I presume, really chalky. Now, remember that like everybody that's high priced that projects well in a good matchup is just going to be chalky because you could play them, right? So, you know, you're going to have to kind of determine whether, you know, Andre Drummond is better, say, than Cat at the center position, for example. You know what I mean? So let's talk about this. So Andre Drummond looks like a tremendous play. The other thing you could, if you want to look at guys like Reggie Jackson again, as I don't want to say a pivot or maybe even alongside with some of that Houston value. That's another thing you could do. I don't know if I'm going to go with Derrick Rose. It's probably a good matchup, and he probably projects pretty well if he does. I just have a feeling that I'm going to find better.
Yeah.
Like if you go up a little bit for Jimmy Butler, like for example, you know what I mean? Like I don't know if I want to go with Rose, but he looks fine. The one guy in Cleveland I'm kind of interested in. This is going to be totally game log watching. Is I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
But you're right about this. I know what you're about to say, and you're right.
Yeah, but last time these guys played, Tristan Thompson for like 100 fantasy points.
Oh, I thought you were talking about something else.
So that's the way I was going to go. But
I just want to
me
point out that Larry Nance has been just massacring.
Yep. Yeah.
It's not like against Washington, they actually gave him all the run instead of over Thompson. Thompson's minutes are down. I definitely like the Thompson play. Don't get me wrong. But I think if you want to be really sharp and get a low, like the last two winning slates, Larry Nance was on the winning team in both slates at 3%.
Sure was.
And the sharper players are playing this guy, picking up on this recent trend. Now, those were good, much better matchups for a front court player. You got the Chicago terrible rebounding, so he gets 11 boards. Washington plays the lightning quick, perfect pace for him. Understandable. A little different against Detroit with Drummond in there. But it's just worth enough to speculate on, like, things are trending in the right direction. So I'm willing to take a little bit of a shot on Nance, whereas it makes me also have a little less love for guys who I usually like to play, like Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson at this price I would like to play. But I'm a little bit wary of it here. We also have, like, we got Kevin Porter back in the last game, which made everybody get off of Darius Garland. I understand that Garland has sucked, but he's cheap. He's going to play 35 minutes. He's going to shoot, and I believe in this kid's talent overall. I think he's an interesting off-the-board play, probably a better play on FanDuel at 4.3, although you have to use one of your point guard spots. But, like, I would rather play Darius Garland just above the minimum than I would play Clemens on FanDuel, for example, at the minimum, because I think there's a lot more upside for Garland than there is for Clemens.
Andre Drummond scored freaking 60 fantasy points 2 games in a row against Cleveland. Now, one of them he played 57,000 minutes, so whatever.
Yeah.
He's
it's a good spot for him. He's going to be hard to avoid. He's definitely going to be the chalkier spend up, and I agree with it. As of right now, I'm trying to find ways to pivot off of it. I don't have any interest in Derrick Rose or anyone from Detroit except for Reggie Jackson, just playing on the speculative upside of potentially getting an increase in minutes in a really good matchup. But I really do like Garland, Thompson, Nance, Love. Well, I'll have some exposure to Love, I should say. But mostly it's Garland, Thompson, and Nance for me, and especially Garland, to be honest with you.
Okay, moving on to Orlando, Miami. The first thing I want to say is, just piggybacking off of that last comment where you said, well, I like Drummond more than whatever, than some of the other spend ups. And I was thinking about Cat versus Drummond. And then, we had this discussion a couple of days ago about these centers, right? There were so many good centers. I'm not saying this is exactly the best thing to do, but if everybody's going to be trying to decide between Cat and Drummond or maybe playing them both, I mean, I have Vucevic at like significantly less ownership, who's certainly isn't as great a spot, and maybe certainly doesn't have the upside of either of those two guys, but or at least hasn't shown it recently. But Vucevic could be, again, like if you're going to play like cheaper value from the Houston game and you want to get low own something, Vuce at 8,600 might be an idea. The other thing I would say about this game is it's kind of irresponsible to take too big of a stand right now at 12 o'clock because there's all kinds of Miami stuff that could happen, with the different guards that could be out and different. Like I'm right now presuming that Nunn and Dragic are out, Butler and Hero are in, for example, but who knows? I'm just not exactly sure what to do. But like for now, Butler looks like a really, really good play at 8K. I presume he's going to be popular. And again, same type of thing as before. If you play cheap Houston value, you can either spend up for two studs maybe, or play like 3 or 4 of these like Butler type prices. So you could get whatever you want. Butler certainly looks like to be a really, really good play here. One of the best plays on the slate in a vacuum.
Yep.
Aside from that, again, I'm just presuming that I shouldn't even do this, but if Nunn and Dragic are out, I like Hero. But great. I mean, I'm just not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just keep a lookout for maybe if a lot of guys are out, maybe a really weird, if he's even Deion Waiters, maybe. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing.
I have a weird one for you, but it's not that weird.
All right, go ahead.
James Johnson, if there's a bunch of guys out, I think that's really, really sharp. James Johnson is a guy who can do things. Look, we love Nectat for a reason. Like he can. You saw it happen a couple games ago. He put up 40 fantasy points.
He did. He got there. He did that, huh?
Yeah, he went up for the monster game. Like, and then I mean, even against the Knicks, a few weeks back, he put up 27 in what did he do it in 20 minutes? So if he gets that minute upside to the 26 to 28 range, there's an off the board play that just no one in the world is thinking of. Even if these guys are out, I don't think anyone's going to play him. So against a team with multiple bigs where they might have to play Bam with him more, because the Linux sort of has fallen off out of the rotation a little bit. I think that
well, hold on a minute. Let's talk about that because I heard there was a lot of people whining the other day that Olynyk played more than people thought he was going to play. So
yeah, he has had 2 games in a row where he did. I don't know what to say about that. So that worries me more. Like, look, I'm not saying play James Johnson all over the place, but he was my speculative play. I guess you could make the same argument, especially on FanDuel for Olynyk, but I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest with you. I think I would rather speculate on James Johnson than Olynyk on DraftKings, at least. On FanDuel, maybe you have a different story.
I might want to go, if you want to get speculative with these bigger guys, I might go with Myers Leonard at 3,400. I mean, I don't know.
Sure, absolutely. It really does depend on who we end up having in. And like these teams both play big, so there's going to be a lot of big guys on the court. I like Butler a lot. I think that I think the ownership might end up like pricing me out a little bit, to be honest with you. I think he's going to be ludicrously high owned in what is actually a tough matchup, even though, look, he's got to carry more offensive load. He makes a lot of sense. If I had to bet on someone is he going to get 5-6x? I would bet that he does, but I don't know if once he gets to be, because I know we're projecting around 30% ownership right now. I think there's a way this slate plays where he could end up being like 65% owned. And
yeah, I don't know about that, but I would like to say that again, he has been really a couple of things. He has been very tilting to me. He's never seemed to get there when he's supposed to. And Orlando is definitely not the team to, you know what I mean? It's not the team to attack with a 30% guy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. That's basically, well, I would say not with a 50% guy. I think if he's in the 30s, I'm going to have a lot of interest in him. I don't think he's going to be. I really think that people are going to gravitate towards that play.
Okay.
But maybe I'm wrong. Hey, look, if I'm wrong and he stays at 30, let's play him.
Yeah, so again, I'm looking at the slate again, from the perspective of where to get, ownership fades, you know what I mean? Like you can either find like lower owned mid-range guys or maybe like a stack of a game that's not going to be as high, that highly owned as a stack. So I'm kind of interested in hearing what you think of the Sacramento Minnesota game. So let's do that one. First thing from the Sacramento side.
Oh, we're on that one. Sorry, I was on the other one. Yeah, let's do it. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so on the Sacramento side, first of all, I think that De'Aaron Fox. Now again, he probably can be popular too, but I don't know. You can't play everybody. But if Butler's really going to be 40% at that ownership, I mean, excuse me, at that price, if you could play Fox.
Let me rephrase this. It's if everyone's out, that like if everyone who's speculative is out, then he will be owned like that. If they're in,
Okay.
then he won't be. That's what I would put the caveat on.
So
overreact to that.
So the two guys I like the most on Sacramento are actually going to be Fox and Dedmon again. You want to know the truth? I mean, like he's busted before, so maybe he won't be owned today. But again, what's his name certainly doesn't play a lot of defense. So I think that Dedmon could get some, can do some things. And the idea is that you can make the case that they need him, against Cat. So I actually feel a little more confident about him today than I did the other day when we made the case that you probably didn't need him. So I like him, and then I'll be willing to go back to our play from the other day and take another shot maybe at Bogdan. Again, we like to attack Minnesota in general, and for all the reasons that you mentioned in the last show, which was basically just he's on his way back and he has upside, and maybe he just needs a good matchup and he can just go off. And this could be the one. They kind of screwed us a little bit by starting him and whatever, only because it drove his ownership up a little bit, and so I don't know what's going to happen.
It is usage down. It was the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So
he'd be my next guy. Then I will throw out obviously Bjelica going back to Minnesota. You can address that if you like. On the Minnesota side, I actually really there's a couple of things I want to think about. I really love Cat in this spot. I would like to play him. I would like to play him instead of Drummond if I can. And that's just my opinion on that. I just think he's got Drummond's been, he's been good. He's been, whatever. But I still think that Cat's got that 80-point upside if everything goes well. And it will certainly be lower.
With 9,900, he would probably have the same ownership as Drummond. But it's just that 10K price thing that people get in their head.
Yeah, the one that the guy and Wiggins is whatever. I don't think I feel like playing him today. But the guy who's kind of polarizing for me is Culver. Like I actually bit the other day, like when they announced that Culver was going to be starting over Okogie. I swapped out of all my Okogie. I went right into Culver, and then I just don't think he played for like the whole first half. Where he had like 2 fantasy points in the first half.
He didn't play well.
Oh, he was just bad. Okay, well, being bad is fine. So if he's 4,400. And he's got to be popular. He just has to be at 4,400. But he's the guy that I might end up having to play, especially if I want to do some stacks in this game. So for me, it's Cat and probably Culver. I don't know if I'm going to go down to Jordan McLaughlin, that type of thing. And you can tell me whether to play Wiggins.
Yeah, my answer to Wiggins is just no. Don't play him.
Fine by me.
Unless Cat's out or something. I'm just not like other people are can go for this chalk and you get a guy with cash game upside. I just don't understand how.
Why do you say that again? Like for people that haven't played as long.
When does he put up a big number with Cat on the court ever? Like I don't like. It's been like at this price. Like he can if he was 6K, we could have that conversation. But
when you say cash game upside, what do you mean by that?
I mean like 5-6xing.
Okay.
Like when he's hot and 11 for 19 from the floor, and 8 for 12 from 3 or 3 for 7 from 3 or whatever he is, and he puts up 41 fantasy points here. Great. I would, if you just told me he's going to get 42 fantasy points for me, I would say, okay, I'll play him. But that's his upside sort of. And his downside is literally like 15.
Yeah.
Like he can put up nothing. I just think also there's better plays in the range. There's a lot of things. I would much rather speculate on a less owned Eric Gordon in a unique situation than I would on Andrew Wiggins here. So I like Cat too. I tend to agree with you that is a great. Maybe you play him in addition to or instead of a Drummond. I also think you can speculate with. I like that. I think Culver makes sense to speculate. I think that Okogie makes sense to speculate a little bit. What irritates me is these other Bates Diop being in there. Like they're just playing a few other guys at a little too many minutes to where I could really commit to these guys. But I have to point out that, when Okogie was announced to start a couple nights ago and he was 0.8% owned, he won me a lot of money and almost won me all the money.
How did that I still don't understand how that happened.
Because there was so much other value.
I guess.
And it's funny because we talked that day about that. Yeah. There's going to be things that open up later in the day that's going to make you
Yeah.
overlook a potentially really solid option. Now, a
Yeah.
Kobe can also be a killer. So it's not like he can, I've seen him play 30 minutes and put up like 5 fantasy points. He can do the exact, like, he can be a killer. But still, if you at near minimum price, when he's going to play 30-ish minutes in a good matchup, you have to at least consider him. Like, so I sort of think that speculating on him or Culver, obviously who's ever starting has a little bit of an edge. But I think even playing the other one might be a little bit of an interesting way to go. But I don't want to get overly involved in that side of it. I'm really interested on the King side of this. Like, you know how I feel about Minnesota. You just play twice what the projected ownership of it is of every relevant player against them, and I truly believe that. So nothing's going to change for me in that tonight. It doesn't mean I need to play very much Buddy Hield, for example, but I'm going to play 25+% of Bogdan. I'm going to play 20% or more of Dedmon. I'm going to play, honestly, my favorite play on their side, and this is a weird one because I don't usually like paying this price for him, but I love Bielitsa here. The matchup is perfect. You've got the return to Minnesota narrative. He's been really solid and consistent and hasn't really had that ceiling-ish game. This is a good environment for him to do it. We think that this is where you can get him. So I like Bielitsa. I think there's projected ownership on him now, but I don't think it's going to play out that way. So I think he's going to end up.
Is he still like 5,200 on FanDuel?
No, on FanDuel he's still. I think he's actually expensive on both sides now. Okay. 61 on FanDuel, 65 over here. I think that there's 45, 50 point upside for him. I prefer him by a great deal over a guy like Karl Anthony Towns, especially when a guy like Andrew Wiggins. Especially when you factor in that I think he's going to be really unowned, and I just don't buy this ownership projection on him.
I will also like to say, by the way, since you're talking about Gordon at 5,900 or whatever, maybe not today, whatever, but there's going to be a slate, and then look, there are 5 slates this week, all like really, really good slates. Like goes from 6 games to 10 games to 7 games to 6 games, like all the way through Saturday, and then Sunday's got a 4-game Super Bowl slate, whatever. I don't know how many games these guys are going to play, but I do believe that someone that's going to win 100K is going to have Buddy Hield in their lineup. I do. I feel that one of these days he's going to come off the bench, get hot, and score 50 fantasy points at no ownership. I don't know exactly when or how, but he's just one of those guys that, again, self-correlates. He makes 1 or 2 threes coming off the bench. God forbid they have him in a blowout run or something like that. He's going to just destroy somebody. So just throwing it out there. I don't know if today's the day.
I love that call. I think that I hate the price on him. But like the funny thing is, his ownership he'd be unowned if he was 6K too. Like that's what's annoying about it. Like you could get them at the same low ownership at 6K instead of 66. But whatever. I think I completely agree with you. I would bet somebody in the next couple of weeks wins a tournament with Buddy Hield.
Yeah. All right. So let's go on. But I do think this is a game that we could do stuff with. And you like Bogdan again?
I like Bogdan. So my preferred plays are Bielitsa. Then I have Bogdan and Fox right about the same. I'm a little worried. I just want to point out that Bogdan is not the same as he used to be, and it's really annoying to me what they're doing with playing Bazemore in there, which is also cutting in Hield's minute. Like, I don't like any of that nonsense. It feels like it does limit Bogdan's minute upside, but I still think he's a great play at this price in this matchup, and I'm going to have him. And I think he'll have a little bit of ownership, but I don't think it'll be as high as people think. So him and Fox I have in a similar tier. Maybe he's a little ahead of Fox. And then just beneath them, I have Dedmon. I like Dedmon. I think your call was really right. Like, are they going to really try? I mean, so we've got 36 projected minutes from centers here. So you're going to try and put Anthony Tolliver on Towns. Okay, that shouldn't work. Harry Giles can't guard Karl Anthony Towns. Dedmon, at least for all of the things, he's got size and he's a good defender. He'll get in foul trouble. I would bet you Dedmon fouls out tonight, which means I think he'll play enough to foul out, which means that you want.
I might be.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you want until the end of the game. Of course, until the game goes into overtime, and then you're furious because he's fouled out. But whatever, we'll take it.
That's what I tell. I'm telling you, these kids that I coach sometimes have this really aggressive, like power forward type kid, and I just don't. I said, listen, if you fouled out, you played a great game. You know what I mean? It means you're in there, you're aggressive, you played most of the game. You know what I mean? The guys that they take out with 4 fouls and like never put back in the game. Like, I'm like, just give me a break. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Just let them freaking play. You know?
I'm totally with you.
Okay, so great. So moving on, I guess, to Dallas, Oklahoma City. So newsflash, Luka Doncic is very good at basketball. And he's going to probably score 70 fantasy points or somewhere between 60 and 70 fantasy points today. And he's certainly an option that you can play tonight with relative ease. You know, you can certainly get him in. Can you get him in with some of the other guys? Maybe not. But if you think that he has that ceiling where, you know, he can get an 80 fantasy point night, which is certainly possible, you can certainly get him in. And I actually have no problem doing it. You know, I will definitely play some lineups with Luka in it. I'm not playing anybody else on the Dallas side, but as long as Luka's on the floor, and he's only 11-9, whatever it is. But, you know, he certainly is a really, really good play. And tonight there's enough value on it that makes him playable. I don't know what his ownership's going to be, but, you know, he's certainly worth taking shots on. It's so funny to have to say taking shots on Luka. You know what I mean? He's certainly looks to be a really, really good play today. On Oklahoma City, I struggle. Like for on the one hand, I'm inclined to suggest that Adams is cheap enough where I can play him. I don't know if I want to take up a center spot with him though, with all the other stuff we've discussed. Like I'd rather play down for Dedmon or go up to, you know, Towns and or Drummond or both, you know, whatever it is, than deal with Adams in here. But I guess if I had to play someone in Oklahoma City, I would just play the upside guy. I would play, I guess, either Shea or Chris Paul. You know, I don't know. I guess it's smart if you're going to play Luka, maybe to run it back with one guy, at least for Oklahoma City. So maybe I'll do that. Maybe Shea Luka, maybe Paul Luka, something like that.
Yeah, I don't think you can play Steven Adams anymore, in my opinion. Okay. That's just my personal take. Like, the guy hasn't played more than 20 minutes. It hasn't played 30 minutes in 3 weeks. And yet every projection system always has him projected for 30 minutes. So it's just to me like a little bit, it's just where I'm at until I start seeing that he's back. And by the way, they're giving a lot of minutes to Noel now. Like, I think he'll get minutes tonight more than his 15 projection.
I think he's going to be back, right, Noel?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's not missing a game in Dallas. I'm sorry, a game against Dallas.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, anyway, so I am shocked and completely confused at the ownership projections in this game.
Okay.
I know I've mentioned a lot of good plays, and at the end, don't worry, I'll size it all up for you guys. I think one of Chris, Paul, or Shea has a monster game here. My lean would be Shea, but I'm close between both of them. And I mean, look, we've seen CP3 do this. When they need him to come up big, he's been terrific. I mean, I am not a Chris Paul fan. I want to point out that he had 8 votes from all players combined for the All-Star voting. He was the biggest difference between fan voting, media voting, and players. You know what that means? People don't like it. That's fine with me though. Like, I mean, I love that he's not going to be owned here, and I think he and Shea both have tremendous upside. And Chris Paul, say what you will about him, but he's a competitor. Like, when someone's going to go hard at him, like Luka's going to, and it's not going to be just at him. I'm guessing they put Shea on him mostly, but like, it's going to make somebody try and, you know, somebody on the other side is going to have to do something. So great game to target just with the Luka on one side. And honestly, like, I think you can get away with potentially playing both of those guys or one of those guys with Gallinari. And that's sort of the route that I'm going for this.
I love it. I think it's great. I think it's awesome. And I think that that your comment about playing one of them with Gallinari makes sense because, you know, Gallinari's just a spot shooter, and you know what I mean? These guys can get assists to him and things like that. So I think it's awesome. And again, if these ownership percentages are close to accurate, you get either of these two guys at sub 10%, you know, that's exactly what I've been talking about. That's exactly the type of low owned leverage that has upside that then you could go, you know, do whatever you want in Houston.
Yeah, exactly. You could play the chalk and do that. And by the way, you could try and play one of those guys versus Luka and then play the Houston game or something, and you'll be off the board still.
Yeah, and you know what I feel bad about? You mentioned that Willie Cauley-Stein has been Dallas has him now. Yeah. I guess that's the end of Boban, right?
Oh man, I don't think we can play Boban. But you know what?
No, I don't mean playing. They might end up having to trade him or something, right? What are they?
You know what's going to end up happening? He's going to end up like out of the blue for some reason, end up playing like 30 minutes out of the blue and put up like 75 fantasy points at 0 ownership. Is there anybody more likely to do that? I mean, he might put up like 45 fantasy points one night and no one will have him. He would have won someone a tournament, but nobody played him. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah, but you see where I'm headed here. So we one more game, Shai. You know, before we do the last game, like I'll give you an example. Like, look at this lineup that I that just up on my screen. I want for those of you that are just watching this to see this lineup, and I want you to really grasp like how like terrible a lineup this would be to put in like a big MME tournament. You know what I mean? Like all of these guys that are in this lineup are really, really good plays. Like I think every one of them. I mean, all like ownership aside. But like if you put stuff like this in, you know, the $15 tournament, they have to be 200,000 people. It just has just no chance. And I think to really understand why that is just so important for those of you that want to play GPPs. And for those of you that are watching this, I presume that you guys aren't watching this to figure out good cash game lineups, because that's just not what we do. You know what I mean? You want a good cash game? I put this thing in. I'm sure this will be fine. You know what I mean? But there's a real difference between good plays and good tournament lineups.
Totally agree. And with all aspects, that is a. Having said all that, watch now that lineup's going to be the nuts tonight.
It can't. It can't. Yeah, it'll be the nuts, and it would be nice to split it with 37 people or something like that. All right, so San Antonio, Chicago. That's the last one, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I think this game is extremely interesting and can be another way to get something going. So. But you got to be kind of creative, and you got to have a Popovich crystal ball, and you got to really just kind of like figure out what's going on. So I guess I'll start with the harder one. I guess I'll start with San Antonio. I mean, LaMarcus Aldridge at 7,200. He's projected to be just kind of an okay play, but it's probably, I presume, he's going to be low-owned or lower-owned than he has been. And, you know, you want to pivot, you want to try something. You know, you're going to have run backs from Chicago, which we'll talk about. So you could try LaMarcus Aldridge. Then you got to really, really get these guards right. Like you got to like think, boy, DeJounte Murray, really he's going to get the minutes this time? Or maybe like, I don't know, Patty Mills, Rudy Gay at 3,500. I don't know, DeMar DeRozan. He seemed really upset about Kobe more than anybody yesterday. Maybe he comes out and just really just goes after a really.
I like it. I like that. There's the narrative we're looking for.
And so the good thing is, again, if you do that and you get away with it, on the Chicago side, you could, again, this is really just atrocious, but like now Zach LaVine is like $1 billion on DraftKings against the quote unquote San Antonio defense. And boy, this is a rough sell with Drummond at 9,400 and catches 300 more with a much bigger floor and probably, I would have to say also a bigger ceiling than Zach LaVine, but I don't know, man. If you want somebody who's going to be just, I would assume he's going to be low owned. They have some ownership projections of him getting ownership. I just don't see it happening.
I can see it though, because without like the impression now is that without Markkanen, he's going to go out and put 70 up every time by some people. I don't.
And then so Thaddeus Young looks to be again very good play with what's his name out, and if he's going to be low owned, I'll try it as part of a stack. But I don't know how low owned he's going to be. And this is like kind of gross. I really don't even want to bring this up. I mean, I just.
What is it?
I was going to say like a Kobe narrative for Kobe White to like.
God.
That's really disgusting. I know, but I just kind of like the new one.
But
that's awful.
To give like a gunner like a reason is always worth considering.
I don't know, but if you want something low owned, I would try maybe. If you want something really gross from the San Antonio side, Lonnie Walker at 3K. I don't know. So again, I'm really reaching here, but I'm like trying because I do want to play some of this Houston value. So what do you think about this game?
I am obsessed with the LaMarcus Aldridge thing. DeMar DeRozan.
Oh, DeMar DeRozan.
Narrative I can buy into, that I understand. He patterned his game after Kobe. He worshipped Kobe growing up. He went to USC because he loved Kobe and he wanted to be in LA. DeMar DeRozan's LA kid. I'm gonna get emotional, but like, you know what? If he's going to be the one who hurts me today because I'm too sentimental, so be it. First of all, he's probably a safe enough play anyway in a good spot. It's not like he has to deal with the difficulty of the Bulls. Like Chris Dunn is the issue for this game. Like he's a great defender. I don't think people understand how good Chris Dunn actually is as a defender. But I just think like he doesn't match up well with DeRozan. DeRozan's too big for him. So I think DeMar DeRozan is a terrific play. I think DeJounte Murray, we have to keep taking shots. Like, I just think that I'm not going to let it break me. Like, I mean, yesterday he was the major mega chalk or whatever. So today he's not going to have, or actually I don't even know if he was mega chalk. I just played him and he had a nice game. For 4,500, I just think as long as he's under 5K, we've kind of got to just keep taking our shots with him, be at least ahead of the field. I don't know if that means we have to lock him in, but like maybe being at 25% today or something, somewhere in that range, because he is just way too cheap for what the actual upside is. And I mean, he could put up 40 in 24 minutes. There's, even with the thing about Murray, we know there's only basically upside for his minutes, I feel like.
Yep, absolutely.
So we know even if they're not 30, if he gets 28, he becomes a phenomenal play, right?
Yeah.
So I think we roll with him a little bit. It's a shame they have a lot of good guards that they like, and they split the minutes up pretty evenly between them. But DeJounte Murray is the one who could help you win the slate. So I'm all over DeRozan and him, and I'm fine with Aldridge. It just feels weird to play a chalky LaMarcus Aldridge when he's not getting there more than he's gotten there big a couple times, but mostly he's not getting there big almost ever. So I'm more inclined, even in a good matchup, to sort of stay away if he's too chalky.
Yeah. So I mean, basically the DeRozan thing is this. I mean, let's call it what it is. Like if Jimmy Butler's 34, 35, 40% owned at 8K, and DeMar DeRozan is let's just say less at 8,200. And let's just put it this way: if you play Butler, if like Bobby Firestone, if you played Butler instead of DeRozan and DeRozan went off, you might not see Bobby tomorrow. Like, I think that's a really, really good take. And again, it's a good combination of probably a decent play on its own, probably a good play when you factor in ownership. And if the narrative is worth anything, it probably makes it a great play.
And narrative can go one of two ways. Like it can go the other way too, where some guys are emotional and something happens, maybe it falls the other way. But I just can't believe that somebody, like DeRozan, and I do want to point out he's been a pretty good narrative guy. Like he absolutely torched the first two times they played the Raptors last year. He torched Kawhi with Kawhi guarding him. He put up 60 fantasy points both times, or at least one time he did. Maybe the other time was like 50 something, but dude, let's fucking play him.
I'm in.
I'm like super in. Like I've talked myself into it probably a little bit too much, where he's now my highest owned player by far.
All right, well,
Kobe Day.
That sounds good to me. All right, so in general, you could go through. Why don't you go through, like, again, this is early, right? But go through your exposures, and I'll come up with like a couple of just kind of like nuggets that throw in when you're done.
Yeah, so I've been, building out my exposures during this show. Right now, I currently have DeMar DeRozan as my highest owned player, followed by Daniel House, PJ Tucker, Chris Clemens, Austin Rivers, all in the same tier, unfortunately, along with Drummond just beneath them. Because I like all those guys. And I'm starting, now that I think about it a little bit more, I think I'm going to try and get a little more Towns than Drummond. I sort of like your take on that. And Towns has also had like foul trouble recently and been in some spots where he could have put up much bigger games than he did. I love Darius Garland, who's going to be the off the board play. And look, I don't care what the ownership say on him right now. No one ever plays this guy. He's less than 5% owned on every slate. He's won me six figures once this year, and he won me another 50K one time. I know he hasn't been great lately, but these minutes, you can't ask for more than these minutes. And he's a gunner. He's an absolute gunner. He was 4 for 20 and 4 for 17 before the last game, his previous two. This is a guy who's going to go out there and give you a chance, and you're going to get him at very low ownership. So he's a great pivot. I love the Eric Gordon play personally. If you're going to play the game stack-ish, like if you're going to play somebody from Utah, but I don't know that I want a ton of him on his own. So mostly, we get into guys like, I like Thaddeus Young. I like Joe Ingles. I like a lot of the chalkier guys, but the ones I'm pivoting with are Eric Gordon, Ben McLemore, Tristan Thompson, Darius Garland, DeMar DeRozan. Those are my main pivots, with some Larry Nance in there too.
Yeah. So
actually, you know what? Let me change that. Yeah. I want to add more as I see it now. I think I'm a little more into the situation in Dallas, where I like to play one of those guys. And I just think the ownership is too low on all of them.
Yeah. So one of my takes is exactly what you just actually said. One of my takes is again, presuming ownership is low, I think, again, running a Luka mini stack with one or two of those Oklahoma City guys is one thing you could do. Another thing is, again, like the battle between Cat and Drummond is going to be a good battle with respect to ownership, with respect to take, with respect to all of it. So if you could get away with, with Gobert, you know what I mean, or Vooch or somebody like that, obviously I think the Gobert might be a little bit of I shouldn't say that. I don't know which is a better matchup. But I think that both those guys could be decent pivots off of what could be two very chalky guys. I think there are builds where people are going to play them both. And if you want to go really, really crazy, I'll go back to my original take and go with Tristan Thompson. And I guess my last thing is regarding that game, something that you said, like about Larry Nance being a possibility really low owned. I could even go one of two, Nance or Tristan Thompson, and hope that one of them just kind of goes off there. Again, that's nothing just completely crazy, but I will say that there are ways on this slate to be different. Okay. And I don't think you have to really hold your nose too much. I don't think you say, oh my God, if I fade Drummond, is he really going to bury me? Okay, maybe. But I think that you can replace those points without sacrificing too much. Right. So I think that, again, I said it's every slate. Don't get too chalky. Don't just play the best plays. I think we've given you enough. Like I mentioned this, like maybe one of the first things that shows we did is one thing that I would do when Bobby would go through all this stuff. I literally just have like a pen and a piece of paper, and just whenever he mentions something with somebody that was not really well projected or that no one's mentioned before, someone I hadn't heard of or not heard of, didn't think was a good one, just write it down and have like a pool of like 10 or 12 guys that you're like, these are going to be kind of off the board plays that might not pop in projection models, might not pop whatever, but they instantly dechalkify your lineup. And God forbid that, you could put two of them together, and correlate them in some way. They're all going to have like a lot of upside. We're never going to give you like off the board plays that are just kind of like 0.6 per minute fantasy guys that are just going to be, oh, here's a cool 3K, but here's a cool 3K, that guy that I think has upside, maybe gets 17 points. You know what I mean? That's really not the point. So even though some of the lower end guys are just going to look kind of shitty, if you just look at quote unquote medians, I think you need those guys if they have upside to make these lineups less chalky. And I think today you can make that work.
Yeah, and I just want to point out there are some pivots off of some of these other chalky or Houston guys that the one guy who, look, and it's disgusting how little he produces, but he's going to play 30 minutes, and it's Luguentz Dort for Oklahoma City. I think that it's worth it to, like, these are the kind of slates where I like to speculate on the other, when everybody else is going to be on the other ownership. You're still getting the same amount of minutes. You're actually getting more minutes out of him than you're going to get out of Clemens. Now, he's not as much a creator as Clemens is, but if he can just accidentally get his way to 25 and Clemens ends up busting at 15, you're playing from way ahead. And I think that's absolutely possible. So
keep something in mind, like Clemens and House and let's say McLemore and FanDuel, and Gordon and Rivers. By the same token, you'll probably get one or two of them that get 10x. I bet you there's one or two, if not more, that get you less than 5x. You know what I mean? So it's not all four of them are just not going to blast. I just don't think so.
Like, I really think that the more I'm starting to think about it, I'm starting to wonder if Clemens may be a mistake outside of game stacks and tournaments, because there's definitely a bust route there. Like, it sucks because he's probably going to get 20 plus fantasy points, but like, I don't feel as great about it. I don't think that he has to. Like, he might play like 15 minutes. He might play like 12 minutes.
I got bad news for you, Bobby. If he gets 20 fantasy points, he's not on the winning line.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, he might get 25, I'm saying, or whatever. But I think that maybe we try to avoid that and go for the more secure minutes with like Austin Rivers, who's going to be actually probably even a little bit lower owned, which is weird. I don't know. That's sort of the route I would go. I would go for the sure minutes with House and Rivers and all those guys.
All right. So we got lots to think about. And as always, there's going to be news coming out. Miami news could come out. Don't be surprised if some superstar just rules himself out for personal reasons. Yeah, it's possible too. Or like Bobby said, you want to have an off the board, whatever. Don't be surprised if at the last minute, not even the last minute, but let's say 2 hours before game time, Russell Westbrook is upgraded to questionable or something like that. you know,
And by the way,
then
I
he
would
plays.
treat that on FanDuel if he's upgraded to questionable or something like that happens.
Oh,
You
I'd lock him in.
Yeah,
I'd probably lock him in.
absolutely lock him in. Totally agree.
All right, sounds good, man. If
Yeah.
you know, maybe come on live later. If not, good luck today, and hit us up with
Let us know
what
later.
do you want,
I think I'm going to do a little live thing. I'm going to probably do some more Kobe stuff just because it's mostly what I can think about. But yeah, you guys, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Wait, so what do we got to do? I got to use this. So what do you got to get? The thumbs up, the like.
Yeah, you got to
subscribe. What do we get?
Like and subscribe. You can just say like and subscribe. That's good enough.
Subscribe. Okay.
Yeah, give us the like and subscribe, and yeah, we appreciate it, guys. Anyway, happy Kobe Day to everyone. Sad day, obviously, but Kobe, I love you, and we'll miss you. And tonight we're gonna win it for you. So that's where we're coming from. We'll see you guys later. Good luck tonight. We'll see you at the top leaderboards.
See you later.